This is Miss Edna Dollins in Katy, Texas, being interviewed on February 1st, 1986. Okay, Miss Dollins, I see in your old picture right here of the school, and you were saying earlier about y'all had to march into school. Is this something that y'all did every day?
Every morning when we got there, and then at noon, when we ate our lunch, after we got through eating lunch, then we marched in again, twice a day.
At noon, whenever y'all ate y'all's lunch, did y'all have to eat at school, or would y'all walk home?
No, we had to eat at school. In fact, we went to school in a buggy, and the boys would feed the horse at noon, and then we'd eat our lunch, and then we'd march back in the school. Now, high school was on the second floor, and elementary was on the first floor.
So all the grade levels were in this one building?
Right.
Is there any incidences that you can remember that really stand out in your mind from your earlier childhood days that you recall?
Well, before we went to this school, we went to a little country school out north of town, and there wasn't but about 20 or 25 children there. And one day we were cleaning up the yard and burning trash, and some of us started running back and forth through the smoke, and one of the boys ran into me and hit me in the side of the head, and I couldn't see, and they took me home and got the doctor, and it took about almost 12 hours for my sight to come back, and that was one of the most terrible things that I've ever been through. But I was all right in a few days and went back to school. But it was fun running through that smoke.
How did most of the people travel whenever you're little around the town of Katy?
Well, at the time these pictures were made, you can see that the streets are not even paved. And most of them traveled, well, some of them traveled in cars, but most of them traveled in buggies or with horses in the early days. I remember when nearly everybody had a wagon or buggies that they traveled in.
During your earlier days, as a kid or as a child, whenever you wanted, or like a playhouse, or whenever you wanted to be by yourself or play with your friends, where'd you go?
We had a big yard, and we had castor beans. Have you ever seen castor beans?
No.
Well, they have great big leaves, and they grow up tall. And we built our playhouses under there. Daddy bought fruit in a big box, because there were 7 of us children. And we'd take that box and make our place for our dishes in there. And we made mud pies and put them in the safe, and that's where we played a lot. And when children come over to see us, well, we'd go out there and play in that playhouse.
Where was your house located in Katy whenever you were a child?
When I was a child, it is about 3.5 miles northwest of Katy. It's on Pitts Road. It's a 2-story house, and my brother still lives in it, and it was built in 1919, I believe.
Has the overall landscape of the prairie of Katy, what change in it has really caught your eye that you really noticed the most?
I think the Exxon plant out there really fascinated me when it was built. And I remember when they built it, and then so many houses started building up right away when the Exxon moved in.
What year was it when the Exxon plant went under construction?
I can't tell you that. I don't remember.
The Katy Depot, when the train came, was that a big thing in Katy? Was that?
Yes, that was a big thing. We always liked to go down and watch the train go by, and everybody on the train waved to us, you know, and we enjoyed that.
Wasn't that one time an ice house too?
There was an ice house, yes, right back of it. And there was an old well dug back there, back of the depot.
In the town of Katy during your childhood, how often did you go to town from your house a week?
Unless we were in school, we didn't go but once a week, and that was to church. Now, Daddy would go, maybe to get groceries, that type of thing. But we didn't. On Sunday afternoon, sometimes we'd go and ride around in the car and pick up other kids and ride to the drugstore to get a 5-cent Coke or a 5-cent ice cream cone.
Did your father ever hunt?
Not a whole lot. He hunted ducks on the farm. He was a good shot with a gun.
Was there a lot of ducks, on the prairie?
Yes. One time they had some people, some friends come out from Houston to hunt with them, and there was about 6 of them hunting, and they had more than their limit. So Daddy didn't even turn his head, and he said, "Boys, drop some ducks. Boys, drop some ducks." And everybody had their ducks like this, and so they dropped enough so that they didn't have to pay a fine. But everybody dropped a few ducks along the way, and when they got to the house, the man was standing there, game warden was standing there waiting for them.
During your childhood days and living in your house that was over on Pitts Road, was there any times where, let's say, you saw wolves or anything like that being out in the country all alone?
Yes, we had wolves within a quarter of a mile of our house every now and then. And then when Raymond and Liz moved out south of town, they had wolves come right up to their place out there, and that hasn't been too long ago.
How many main buildings were there in Katy at the time that you were attending school?
Well, these 4, let's see what, yeah, these 4. Now, you mean business houses?
Yes, ma'am.
And the post office. And these 4 houses, Robinson's store. There was a restaurant on Avenue B. What's Avenue B now? It wasn't then. And I don't remember any other business. We had several churches.
What year was it whenever Katy got their first paved streets?
I don't remember.
As a child, did your family ever own a car?
Yes, we had a car when I was about 7 years old. It was a Ford, and it had the kind of curtains that you can latch up and then take them down or whatever. But when it was raining, Daddy went out and put the curtains up on the car so we could travel. It was a Ford.
If you had to pick one story or something that you could tell for entertainment to some people from any of your past, what story would you tell them?
Oh, that's a hard one. Well, I think I could tell them a story about horseback riding. I always liked to ride horses. And my brother was had his horse saddled and started to go to the pasture, and I told him to let me ride, so he was going to put me on the horse, and the horse stepped on my foot. So I wore a patch on my foot for several months. And then, but it didn't stop me from riding horses. A friend of mine liked to ride too, and she come out to the house with me after school, and we rode horses, and we'd ride them on Saturday. I wish I had the picture to show you, but I don't. But anyway, we were standing one foot in a saddled horse here and one foot in a saddled horse here, and I was standing up on the horses, and she took my picture. And then she stood up on the two horses at one time, and I took her picture. But horseback riding was one of my favorite sports.
Whenever you would attend church?
We went to church every Sunday unless we were ill. And when Daddy couldn't take us, well, Grandpa come by and picked all of us up. We all went to Sunday school and church.
What church did y'all attend?
Methodist. Right where the Methodist is now, but it was a little wooden building.
Was the Methodist and the Baptist church the only churches in town at that time?
In the early church, that was the only two, but it wasn't long until the apostolic church was organized.
Did you ever travel into Houston as a child, or?
Not until I went to school in Houston. I went to business college in Houston, and there were three of us in college together down there from Katy, and one of our parents would come down every Saturday, Friday afternoon or Saturday, and pick us up, and we'd come home for the weekend.
How long of a journey was that from Houston to Katy?
How long what?
How long of a trip was that?
About 28 miles. But that was a long ways at that time, and the road was on this side of the railroad.
How many hours did it take y'all?
Sometimes it was about 2 hours. But there wasn't traffic jams like we have now either.
As a little girl, whenever you were in school or anything, was there ever a time when you were really that you knew that you were in real trouble or anything, but you didn't want to tell your parents, and you tried to get out of it?
Oh yeah. We were practicing for a play, and we had a modern woodman hall, great big hall up there that we practiced in, and we had a Victrola that you wound by hand, and had some songs that was in it and everything. And when we got through practicing, we turned that Victrola on and we danced. And our parents found out about it because we didn't get home as soon as we should have, and the parents come down there to see what was the matter. And we were up there dancing, and we were not supposed to be at all. And my parents were going to keep me home from school, and Daddy got up the next morning and he said, "No, I'm going to take you to school. You're going to be in school." So he took me to school and talked to the superintendent about it and the teacher, and they made quite a big thing of it.
Did y'all get in trouble because y'all weren't home on time, or?
Mm-hmm. And because we were dancing, and we were certainly not supposed to dance.
Who was the superintendent of the schools at that time?
Mr. Oliphant.
Was there a school football team or any organized sports around your school?
We had a basketball team, girls' basketball team that we went into Houston in competition with. And we didn't win, but we enjoyed, was glad that ours was big enough that we could do that. But we went into Houston with the basketball team.
Whenever you look at Katy now and then look at Katy whenever you were growing up, in the town itself, what is it that really catches your attention about the changes?
The number of houses that are here now. There's so many. The population increased so fast. And the number of churches that we have, I think, is good for our town.
In Katy now, is there ever times when you just think that it's all going up too fast? You know, because they're tearing down the old brown building, and there's not too many old buildings that are left from the past that remind you.
That doesn't bother me too much because I'll always remember some of the old homes and old buildings. But I'm just always glad to see new people come to Katy because I think it's a good town. We have good schools and good churches, and I like to see people move to Katy. Some people don't like to see others come in, but I do. I like the growth.
As a child, how many people were living in Katy?
Well, I guess when I was born in 1910, I'd say not more than 500.
Did everyone pretty much know everybody else?
Everybody knew everybody. When new people come to town, everybody knew it.
So if you were ever out in the public and someone saw you where you weren't supposed to be, it pretty much got back to your parents before you knew it?
Oh yes, always. My parents knew pretty well where I was all the time, but and I could drive the car to school, but if I drove it during the recess or during lunch hour, my daddy knew it before I got back home. I wasn't allowed to do that.
Did you ever do that and get caught?
Mm-hmm.
How did it happen?
Well, I just drove the car and Daddy punished me when I got home, and I was supposed to go to a ball game and he wouldn't let me go.
Where'd you drive it to?
I just drove it to the drugstore. We got us a Coke, nickel Coke, and come back to school. Just big shots, you know.
Did you ever find out who sent the line back to your parents?
Mm-mm. No, I never did. I didn't try because I didn't want to talk about it.
Whenever you were little, did y'all have a place in town that y'all could order most of y'all's clothes and stuff, or did y'all go into Houston or get them here in Katy?
We went into Houston sometimes to buy clothes, and sometimes we went to Brookshire. There was a good store down there that had shoes and all kinds of clothing, and we went there sometimes, but usually we went into Houston.
During your childhood, was there ever a time when you really thought that you were in danger, or something was really scaring you, or let's say a natural disaster, hurricanes, or anything like that you can remember?
No. In 1915, on my birthday, I was 5 years old, and we had a storm that day, and I was having a birthday party, and everybody had to go home. But it wasn't as bad as the 1900 storm, but it was a pretty bad storm.
Was any buildings lost or anything?
Not very many. No, we didn't lose any.
Is there anything that your parents always told you that stands out in your mind today that you always remember? I mean, one key thing.
Well, Mama always told us to, like this, quote, remember who you are and what you are. She was very strict with us, more so than Daddy was. She was very strict.
How old were you whenever they started allowing you to date? Or
I guess when I graduated from high school, I had a date that night with a boy that I had met when we went in to play basketball. I had met him down there. And then he come out here for the graduation. And I had a date with him the night I graduated. I guess that's the first date I really had.
living in Katy at that time, was there ever times when you wished that you could go out and be in a big city or grow up in one?
No, I always liked the country. I still do.
Do you consider Katy a little town still, or?
I still think of it as a little town because I lived in Houston for, 18 years. And I enjoyed it, but I was glad when I could come back to Katy.
As a child in Katy, whenever you were growing up, what was just the natural landscape like? I mean, like the creek that runs through town now, and all the trees that are sea up. Was all that here whenever you were little?
Well, now the creek was here, and we lived out on Pitts Road, and the creek run right in front of our house, which was about a quarter of a mile in front of our house. And we enjoyed the creek. We could go swimming in there and go wading and fishing or whatever in the creek, and it's the same creek that runs through here. What was your other question, David?
About, was there all the trees that you see in Katy now? Was
not very many trees. Even along the creek, it wasn't a whole lot of trees, but it wasn't long until the trees started growing in there, and I don't know why or where they come from.
As whenever you're a teenager in high school, is there ever a story or anything that happened to you, something bad or something good, that you always look back on and think about?
Well, I guess one thing was I really don't know. In high school. I don't know anything real outstanding either way. I know that one time we were in cooking, home economics class, and we were going to cook a big meal for the basketball boys. And the teacher was helping us, and we put some potatoes in a cooker, and it blew up. And that was terrible because we had potatoes all over the room. We had to start all over and do some more potatoes.
Did y'all get in trouble for that?
No, the teacher was right there, and it was as much her fault as it was ours. We didn't really get in trouble about it. The superintendent was blaming it on us, and she just stepped up and said this was part of my trouble because I wasn't watching the cooker.
Y'all just didn't stick it in the microwave then, huh?
There were no microwaves at that time.
Whenever you're little, what was it like whenever you're by yourself and you're in your little place? What was it that you can remember that you used to pretend to be?
Well, I wasn't by myself, but we would pretend to be a princess, and we got out some old lace curtains and would dress up like a bride and that type thing, and I always liked to dress up.
Did you play dress up a lot?
Not anymore. But I loved it when I was a kid. I liked to dress up.
Is there just one memory from any time in your past that really just stands out in your mind? Not even happening to you, but just one instant that you can recall.
One thing. I don't know of any one thing that I just can't think of one thing that would stand out in my mind.
Or it's just what are some of the things?
I think maybe my high school graduation was one outstanding thing. And then when I graduated from business college was another one. I think that would be my outstanding things.
If you had some advice or anything that you would like to tell young people or other people, that lessons that you've learned from growing up or your past lives, what would it be?
Well, I think the first thing that I would say would be to get with a good church and stay there. And I think the second thing would be to really respect your parents. That's two things that I would say you need to do. And don't get in with the wrong crowd. At school, usually that's where these things start, at school. But I don't think young people should ever get into the wrong crowd.
How old were you when you realized that or attained this knowledge?
I guess when I graduated from high school and went to Houston. It worried my family so because I was down there, they thought all by myself. And it worried them so till I was almost afraid to go to a movie. But when you get out on your own, well, you'll stop and think more than you do now.
Can you remember attending your first movie in a theater?
Yes, I guess it was the old Majestic Theater, and there were 3 of us in a boarding house going to school. No, it was even before that, because my brother was with us, and we all went to a movie, Low State Theater. and there was about 6 of us went in to that theater. And that's when I was still in high school out here.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Brett Thornton, February 1st, 1986.
Of course, I don't spell well, so I would have spelled it with a C, but it's Shivare. And it means sort of like people did what they did at a Shivare as a means of honoring a new bride and groom. The bride and groom were supposed to be surprised, and they were not supposed to really anticipate, but yet most of them within, like, say, 3 weeks after they had married, could just figure that they were going to have people come banging around their house, and they would bring pots and pans and spoons and beat on them and do that sort of thing. And then the new couple was to have something to coffee, cake, cookies, something to treat them with. And I don't know what Mother did with the letter. I can't find that. But I had written a copy of this letter that my grandmother wrote in 1922. And it was about the Shivare for my aunt and uncle. And they lived out in the country, out there close to where the plant is, on the Cliff Farm. And they were anticipating that night, the Shivare would occur. So they drove west toward Brookshire, and they stayed, and well, the people from the neighbors and the people from town who were coming to the Shivare had been to the house one time, but then they left. And let me go back and tell you, that was the days usually when the young man married in the family, he just brought his wife home. So my grandmother lived there, and my aunt lived there, and then Uncle Carl and Aunt Thelma also lived in the same house. The people had been there, but then they left, and they went 2 or 3 miles east, and so Uncle Carl and Aunt Thelma, he drove them home in their little Model T and thought everything was safe, and they had hardly gotten in the house till all of these people came back. And firing guns was also part of the act too, shooting up into the air and that kind of thing. Finally, they got Uncle Carl and Aunt Thelma downstairs, but they still didn't have anything for them as a treat. So they brought them into town and went to a grocery store. And in fact, one of the men who owned the grocery store was with the crowd. And he opened his store, and they treated them to fruit and candy and that kind of thing. But I didn't know whether you'd heard about a Shivare or not. And I know it lasted well into the 40s. The couples were Shivareed when they married. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Miss Roberta Rylander, February 5th, 1986, at 9 o'clock.